All right, welcome to module number 2, the science of anxiety, simplifying the science. Now, I'm going to warn you, as we go through this, you're going to see me reading from the screen quite a bit, but I'm also going to take the time to put it in layman's terms, aka the way I understand it. I put all of these things on the board or on the screen because they're the scientific terms. So if you're more science minded, this might make sense to you. And if you're more maybe like me, we're going to break it down and we're going to understand it together. Let's get module number 2 underway. So, understanding the brain chemistry in anxiety. Now, this is not going to be an entire session of understanding chemistry. It may feel like it at first, but once again, we are going to break this down to simple terms to understand the complicated terms. Let's get started. So, one thing you're going to want to see here is the term amygdala. So, the amygdala, it's a small almond-shaped cluster of nuclei located deep within the temporal lobes of the brain. You can read this, but what I'm going to tell you is think of the amygdala as your alarm system. What it does is it picks up on the stress hormone being raised in the blood, cortisol. And what that does is it fires off signals. So, once again, you're going to see here, it's a central role in the emotional reactions, particularly in fear and anxiety. Helps the brain interpret emotional significance of stimuli triggers appropriate physiological responses. What the amygdala is doing is picking up the stress hormone in your body. It's just a little one-way communicator in your brain. And what it does is it starts recognizing the body's alarm telling it, I'm in danger. Here's the problem with it. Oftentimes, our minds think we are safe. We're sitting in work. We're sitting in bed. We're watching TV with our significant other or our family and friends. And our mind says we're okay. But the body is sending off signals to the brain saying we are in danger. And in the first module, we talked about that Serengeti, that the body is evolutionized to feel that, hey, we're in danger, we're being attacked or whatever. The body will still send that signal even if the mind doesn't agree with it. The amygdala is a one-way communicator. It is picking up on your body's stress signals. It doesn't have the ability to talk back to it and be like, nope, we're okay. It doesn't have that ability. It is just simply picking up what it is reading. And your body's the one sending it off. And your mind can't comprehend why. And research suggests, as we can see in point number 3, that heightened activity or hypersensitivity of the amygdala is associated with anxiety disorders, because it's picking up on the body's stress signals. People with anxiety may have an overactive amygdala, which can lead to exaggerated fear responses and difficulty managing fear and stress. A great book, Untangling Anxiety, explained it perfectly. Imagine your body's stress is like a big bowl of chili. If you're a fan of The Office, imagine it as Kevin's big bowl of chili. What we don't recognize is it's filling up with stress. Now, we've been so conditioned to feel that stress is normal, that every day has stress, all of the things are just so normalized. But once that chili starts overflowing, our mind doesn't recognize it because we've normalized it, we've swept everything under the rug, but the body keeps score. So when it starts tipping over and it starts pouring out, the amygdala is picking up on that. Even though the mind says we're okay, the body is keeping score, and the amygdala is the one that's recognizing what the score is. So let's talk about a little bit of neurotransmitters. So think of these things as they're the tiny messengers in your brain. They're your conditioned and patterned thoughts. They help brain cells talk to each other. A great way of thinking of neurotransmitters, like I said, are conditioned thoughts that we have. So there's a study out there, and I wish I probably should have been able to write it down or put it here, but it's just coming to my mind now, that the thoughts you have throughout the day, which can be, we'll say if there's 5,000 thoughts, 95% of your thoughts are repeat thoughts from the day before. So you think if 95%, imagine how patterned these thoughts are from probably a young age. And then if you throw trauma in there, if you throw all of these experiences in life, and if we've conditioned these thoughts, we want to create a new groove of neurotransmitters. So remember, different messengers have different jobs. You want to feel happy? Serotonin. Others make you feel excited, rewarded, dopamine. These phones? Huge dopamine hits. We become so desensitized to dopamine, we become dopamine numb because we're constantly getting hits every time we scroll, and we become so numb to these things. Also, there's a calming messenger, GABA, which helps you feel relaxed. Once again, these are just high-level things. Just to understand what that is. So we've talked about the amygdala, neurotransmitters, and more on them. If they're not working right, they make you feel more anxious. Let's read the example together. If you don't have enough serotonin or GABA, you might feel more worried or nervous. So on the other hand, if you have too much of the stress messenger and norepinephrine, it can make you feel more anxious. Some medicines for anxiety help by balancing these messengers in your brain, making you feel calmer. When we become dependent on whether it be medicine or others, and a big common practice for anxiety or panic attacks is putting an ice pack on your head, your back, your neck, and it's to distract you and take your focus right out of the anxiety and start to regulate the nervous system. The problem is we become dependent on these things. If we want long-term success, this is more of a personal belief that I'm sharing with you. And it's backed up, but this is just my personal approach to it, is we want to be able to do these things without the dependency of other things, whether that be medication or ice packs, whatever the crutch is. So remember that we can change our thoughts. We can create new neurotransmitters, new neural pathways. So remember, by understanding these things, it gives us a little bit more knowledge and background of what we can do and what anxiety really is and how we want to approach these things. As we move along here, let's talk about cortisol. So you can read this, but what cortisol is, right? It's measured in the blood. It's the stress hormone. It's when we're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, our cortisol levels are rising up. When this happens, the amygdala is reading this. So now you know what the amygdala is. It's the alarm system in your brain. When your cortisol levels reach or rise, it recognizes it. So think of cortisol as the chili, right? The chili is rising in the pot. And the amygdala picks it up and says, "Oh no, we're in danger." So that's where your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode comes in. When the chili starts to overflow. And during these periods of stress, it's going to facilitate throughout the body. And think of when you're in what's the word? When you're, say, in a survival situation, whether it be cold or whatever, your heart is going to beat faster, and it's only going to pump blood to the required life-saving organs. So if you remember in the first module, what I told you one of my symptoms were, maybe you feel it too, is my limbs go numb. Well, it's because my body, the amygdala has picked up on the stress hormone rising, my cortisol, and it says we're in danger. So what my heart is doing, physiologically, my body, it's now saying, hey, focus, we're going to send your blood to the crucial organs in the body that you need to survive. So it doesn't go to my arms, it goes to my life-saving organs, maybe my kidneys, my liver, things like that. So recognizing that this is all happening during what people would just throw around terms as anxiety, this is all happening during that. And chronic stress, prolonged elevation of cortisol can lead to various health issues. including anxiety disorders. High cortisol levels can exacerbate feelings of anxiety, leading to a vicious cycle when stress and anxiety perpetuate one another. So what this is saying is, if we are constantly in this elevated state, other things are going to happen. So good on you for getting to the point now where we don't want things to get worse than they already are. So by understanding these things, you already are a leg up on preventing future illness. Now, the adrenaline rushes. So, adrenaline, as you can read here, is like a power boost that your body releases in excelling stressful situations. So I'll use a sports analogy. There's 5 seconds left on the clock. Your favorite basketball player is inbounding the ball, or they pass it and they get the ball back. They're getting ready to shoot. Their adrenaline is high. They're probably laser focused. They can't hear the crowd. They're in a state of flow. Their adrenaline is rushing through their body. Now, this feeling can cause people anxiety. Some people aren't built for this moment. But when anxiety and adrenaline has a proper funnel to filter out, like, this makes sense why I feel this way in these times. When you feel like you're on mile 24 of a marathon, but you're laying in bed, the body and mind are not communicating. That basketball game, it makes sense why I'm elevated, why my adrenaline's rushing. When you're laying in bed at 2:30 in the morning, it doesn't make sense. It's fearful. It evokes fear because the mind and body are not communicating on the same radio station. And this causes your heart to beat faster. Your muscles and feet are now ready to move. You heard of fight, flight. There's also freeze and fawn. Now, you can be a mixture of them, but some people want to run, some people want to hide, some people freeze, and some people become people pleasers or fawn away into people pleasing to succumb to the situation and manipulate it to get out of it. That's essentially fawn. And as you're going to see here, that's what happens when you're anxious or nervous. The raised cortisol level fires off our adrenaline. And so you'll often hear me say that an anxiety attack is an unwanted adrenaline rush. Now, there's a lot of fun facts about adrenaline, but adrenaline has to run out. You only have a certain amount of anxiety, No, you only have a certain amount of adrenaline. Now, it doesn't mean that the adrenaline won't flip back on at some point. But remember, you're going to get through this attack, through this anxiety, through this panic, because you have to. When you feel like you can't breathe, this is a great example. When you feel like you're stuck in manual breathing mode, remember, you're going to get your next breath. You have to. The body will regulate itself. It's just dysregulated right now. And there's techniques and breathing techniques we can do to do that in a more regulated fashion. But you're going to get there. And it's because we have to. Let's talk about them, right? The flight response. And by flight, I mean fight. We talked about a little bit on the previous slides, your natural reaction to confront the problem head on. You're going to literally fight against it. You may get angry, you rise to the occasions and those kind of things. The flight is you want to get out of there. You want to jump on a plane and you are out. Anywhere but here kind of thing. It's just all about getting away from the scary situation. I couldn't resist putting that picture on there. So let's talk about the freeze response. It stops you in your tracks. It happens when you're so overwhelmed by fear or stress that you feel stuck and that you can't move. Now, there can be different levels to these things. You may experience a little bit of all of them. You're not exclusive to one of the 4 Fs, right? But the fawn response is trying to please to avoid conflict. Remember we talked about it's like the people pleaser. It's a bit different. It's when you avoid the danger or conflict by being extra nice or helpful or by trying to please others. Manipulate a situation. I, for years, thought I was a fight. I've realized I'm fawn through and through. And better understanding these things for yourself will better have you understand why you're acting the way you are. Sometimes we start feeling this way and we go, why am I saying these things, doing these things? And not even realizing we're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And once we recognize that, oh, these are my anxious or my anxiety responses, we then recognize that we're anxious. We take for granted that we assume we know we're anxious all of the time. We don't. Sometimes we don't recognize anxiety is here until it's far too late and we're, this is my experience, in a full-on panic attack. Well, by recognizing, understanding what anxiety is, you're going to recognize, hey, is my body's chili exploding? Is my body's chili overflowing? Is my amygdala firing off signals? Am I going into fight, freeze, or fawn mode? These are all things that we might not otherwise know. So congratulate yourself. That's a difficult module. And I encourage you to go back, and if you're more, once again, scientific minded, go through and you can take notes on those things. Or, like myself, I like to put them in the layman's terms because that's how I understand it and speak to myself and to others about it. But now you understand what's happening in your body while you're experiencing anxiety. I'm not going to say, and that's it. But that's all. That is such a good amount of understanding. You know more than, I'm going to make up a stat here, 85 to 90% of people who have anxiety. You just learned in that module. And as we continue to demystify this anxiety, once again, take a moment to thank yourself for taking this step to understand the inner workings of you. This is no small feat. This is not something that we can diminish or that we don't be proud of ourselves for, because this is the stepping stone to that pinhole of light we talked about, that pinhole of hope. And I hope right now, if you take a moment to take a deep breath with me, you can feel yourself understanding anxiety, understanding yourself, and understanding that everything's going to be okay. And I'll see you on Module 3. See you soon.